You're watching the Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some major news in Trump's Georgia trial, despite Republicans' best efforts to disqualify Fani Willis. Can you explain what just happened today in the courtroom?
So, Brian, what happened today in the courtroom, I consider a win for the people of Georgia and for the voters in the United States more broadly, because Judge McAfee denied Donald Trump's motion, which was joined by a whole bunch of his criminal associates, his co-defendants, who are part of the RICO conspiracy case that Fani Willis brought. Judge McAfee denied the motion to throw the case out, dismiss the indictment altogether, and he denied the motion to remove or disqualify Fani Willis and her office from prosecuting the case. So essentially what happened is there was evidence that had been developed that Fani Willis had hired somebody named Nathan Wade as one of the team members to be part of the team that was prosecuting Trump and company in the Georgia RICO case. She developed a personal relationship with him, and then there was some allegation that she was somehow financially benefiting from the fact that she had hired Nathan Wade to be part of the prosecution team. She was in a relationship with him. They were traveling together. They were incurring expenses, and the defense tried to claim that Fani Willis basically hired Nathan Wade so she could financially benefit and take some of his salary that he was earning as a special prosecutor who had been added to the team. And let me just very quickly give you a flavor of what Judge McAfee ruled in that case. He said, without sufficient evidence that the district attorney acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. He followed it up by saying, there has not been a showing that the defendant's due process rights have been violated or that the issues involved prejudice the defendants in any way. So Judge McAfee pretty definitively rejected Trump and company's claim that the case should be tossed out or that District Attorney Fani Willis must be removed from the case. But he did find that there was an appearance problem. There was an appearance of impropriety given this relationship and the commingling of the finances. So what he did, he said, listen, under Georgia state law, even if there's just an appearance of impropriety that did not prejudice the defendant in any way, there's also a need to make sure that we preserve the integrity of the process so that the people can have confidence in the results, in the outcome of the trial. So he did put a remedy in place. What he said was, listen, either DA Willis and her whole office can remove themselves from the prosecution and Nathan Wade can remain on the team and remain one of the prosecutors, or, and that really didn't make a lot of sense when you look at the alternative Judge McAfee offered. He said, or Nathan Wade can remove himself and District Attorney Willis and the remainder of her team can continue to prosecute this case. And I don't even think the ink was dry on Judge McAfee's ruling before we saw Nathan Wade submit his letter of resignation and District Attorney Willis accept his letter of resignation. So now I would like to say this issue is behind us. But when you read Judge McAfee's 23-page opinion, you know, he definitely is very critical of Willis and of Wade and some of the other witnesses who testified during the hearing on this motion. And I can already hear Trump and company, right? His acolytes, his sycophants, his supporters, his lapdogs. They will be picking up some of the more inflammatory language in Judge McAfee's ruling. And we're going to hear that on an endless loop, at least until they latch on to something new to distract the public away from Donald Trump's, four felony prosecutions. So today there was a little something for everybody, but I would say that DA Willis and the people of Georgia basically won the day today with Judge McAfee ruling that no, the defendants weren't prejudiced, there was no actual conflict, and let's now move on from this issue.
And I think what further underscores the fact that there's no there is I was looking at Fox News and they were putting this graphic up on the screen that showed all of this luxury travel that Wade and Willis were going on, and these were trips that range from like hundreds of dollars to just a couple of thousands of dollars, like extremely modest travel plans. And I think that just kind of underscores the extent to which there really wasn't anything happening here. That they were looking for whatever they can to try to frame these people in a negative light. Glenn, did anything else stick out to you from Judge McAfee's ruling here?
You know, I thought that Judge McAfee was trying very hard to sort of split the baby, right? To give each side a little something. But what I thought that when he was working through his 23-page ruling, replete with lots and lots of authority case law that he was citing to support each of the propositions, each of the conclusions he was reaching. Even though I think you're going to hear people criticizing him on both sides of the issue, he went too hard, he didn't go hard enough. I think he continues to be a fair, independent, and impartial judge in the way he has had to deal with what are some really not only inflammatory issues, but the kind of issues that don't get litigated every day. So I guess I would say it was a thoughtful opinion. The only thing I was a little disappointed by was some of the really inflammatory rhetoric he used, because, I don't care for legal opinions that clearly resolve the legal issue, but then the judge begins to kind of offer opinions about how some of what went on here was really inappropriate and bad judgment was exercised. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that characterization, that is ordinarily not a judge's place. I understand he needed to go from his conclusion that there was no actual conflict to, well, is there an appearance problem? Because under Georgia state law, even an appearance problem that does not prejudice the defendants can allow for some kind of a remedy to be put in place by the judge. And that's what the judge ended up doing. He, put this remedy in place because of an appearance problem, not because of a conflict or any prejudice to the defendants. So, as I say, I think there's going to be a lot for everyone to dislike here, but I really think we should, frankly, save our ire and our criticism and our condemnation for Donald Trump and his 18 criminal associates who tried to overturn the results of the Georgia election, rather than heaping the criticism and condemnation on Willis, on Wade, on Scott McAfee. Really, the reason we are all in this dance to try to save our democracy is because of the crimes of Donald Trump and his co-defendants.
And that's a point, by the way, that Fani Willis herself brought up while she was on the stand. She said, I'm not on trial here. Donald Trump is on trial here. Your client is on trial here. So let's not get it twisted. Glenn, we've spoken in previous episodes about how the flips in this case seem to have slowed to a stop. We had previously had a very quick batch where it was Hall, Kenneth Chesbrough, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis. Do you think that things are going to ramp up now that Fani Willis isn't dealing with the distraction that is this Nathan Wade issue?
Yeah, I hate to give you a lawyerly answer, but I'm going to have to resort to maybe and maybe not. So Here's why I say that. It was just a couple of days ago that Scott McAfee ruled on a motion to dismiss a series of charges, and he ended up dismissing 3 of the 13 charges against Donald Trump. Now, I want to say it's not all that consequential because the lead charge, the RICO charge, which carries up to 20 years possibly in prison, remains. It was not dismissed. But in dismissing the 3 counts against Donald Trump and a few counts against some of the other co-defendants, Judge McAfee said, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase here, these are technical deficiencies that I find in the indictment. There wasn't precise enough language put in the indictment in the charges themselves. However, the prosecutors can remedy that by simply going back before the grand jury and re-indicting with the more precise language. And he gave the prosecutors up to 6 months before the grand jury to make that happen. What does that suggest? Well, if Fani Willis decides to take Scott McAfee, Judge McAfee, up on his offer to go back into the grand jury and more precisely indict these charges, who knows how long that's going to take before the grand jury. Now, it could be done quickly. It could literally be done in a matter of weeks or a month or two. But I don't think we should necessarily look at today's ruling by Judge McAfee and conclude that we're right back on the trial track where we were before this 2-month-long distraction that was this litigation of this motion. I do think you're going to see things begin to move forward, but how quickly it is really tough to say.
And let's finish off with this. Judging what you know about Judge McAfee and how he's presided over the case thus far, and knowing, based on all of the other prosecutions that Trump is dealing with, how he and his team are just solely focused, are hell-bent on getting any delay that they can, does it look like Judge McAfee is going to fall for all of these delay tactics that Trump is trying to put forward in his other prosecutions? Because that'll inevitably come in this Georgia prosecution.
You know, I haven't seen Judge McAfee fall for anything yet. As young a jurist as he is, I think he's 34 or 35, he really has presided admirably and effectively and in a fair and even-handed way for the most part. Here is the one thing that I can now foresee as a result of today's ruling. Donald Trump and company might want to appeal this ruling. Here's the thing. This is not a case ending ruling by Judge McAfee. So I don't know the precise appellate laws and procedures in Georgia, but it could be that this is not the kind of ruling that can be appealed, and here's a big word, interlocutorily. In other words, while the case is pending, rather than having to wait until the end of the case, which is when most of the issues can be appealed. It's upon conviction and sentence. That's when somebody's appellate rights come into play. So they may try to kick up some dust. They may try to file some appeals of today's ruling, even if they're not well-placed appeals. So I agree with you. You know, Donald Trump is going to try to delay this by hook or by crook, right? In any way that the law allows, and probably in some ways that the law doesn't allow. I haven't seen Judge McAfee fall for any of Donald Trump's shenanigans, and I don't expect him to start now.
Okay, well, we'll obviously stay on top of this case as it continues to play its way through the court system. For those watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.